I'm Marianne Shuko, a founder and manager of All's Authors, the global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience to light the way for others. And I'm the author of Blue Hydrangeas, an Alzheimer's love story. I'd like to introduce you to some of the members of our team who are with us tonight. Christy Byrne Yates, she's the author of Building a Legacy of Love, Thriving in the Sandwich Generation. She's my podcast co-host and producer and co-moderating this event. Hello,
Hi.
Christy.
Hi, everybody. Really excited to be
Hi.
here. So this will be
Yeah,
fun.
nice to be here.
Yeah, and we have Malika Moore, who is the founder of Aging and Amazing, which strives to support older adults, caregivers, and the networks that surround them with resources and community. Hi, Malika.
Hello, I'm glad to be here.
Oh, so happy to see you. And we have a little housekeeping to do. This event is being recorded and it will be posted to our YouTube channel. We'll produce it for our podcast, Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia. You can listen to the podcast on all the major podcast sites like Apple and Spotify. You'll find it on our website, allsauthors.com. If you want to know when the replay becomes available, check your email. The announcement will be made in our weekly newsletter. If you don't see it, please check your spam or email us at All's Authors. If we don't have you on our mailing list, you may sign up on our website, allsauthors.org, or watch for it on the book club channel in the Aging and Amazing community. I think we're ready, so let's get started. Tonight, we're pleased to welcome Malia Kline, author of Sisterly Shove, A Fight to the Death Against Pancreatic Cancer and Dementia. Her story of co-caring for her parents with her serious as a heart attack physician's sister. Those are her words. Together, they navigated their mother's pancreatic cancer and father's dementia, not always viewing the situation with the same lens, which led to conflict and, well, sisterly shove. Malia is a writer, producer, and creative director working for radio and television stations, corporate communications, marketing departments, and award-winning ad agencies. She calls herself the supersonic grammarista. She's also an acquisitions editor for All's Authors. Welcome to Books and Chit Chat, Malia.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here, and I'm so glad to have an opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you. We appreciate your coming to us all the way from North Carolina, correct?
Yes, Charlotte, North Carolina, the Queen City.
Awesome. That's great. So you have a very unique story, writing two sisters, and we do have, almost 400 books in our collection, but very few are from that perspective, and that may actually be the only one, I don't know. So we'd like to hear a bit about your relationship with your sister and your parents, about your journey. Many people do not have, it seems like they either have a really great relationship with their siblings on the caregiving journey or they don't have one at all. So, yeah, we'd like to hear your story. So can you just tell us how it all started?
Well, I kind of describe it on the back of Sisterly Shove. So in terms of how my sister and I were alike and different, we were very different. And what I say on the back of the book is, growing up, Malia and Diane always loved each other despite their differences. I had dark straight hair. She had light curly hair. I was a pleaser. I did everything to make our parents proud. She was a Vietnam protester. So two very different ways of approaching life. I was a wallflower. She was a governor's school standout. But I don't think we realized how differently we viewed life, death, and the caregiving in between until middle-aged, when our beloved parents were whittled away by pancreatic cancer and dementia. Another challenge was that she lived in California and I lived in North Carolina, and just the physical distance maybe made us a little suspicious of each other and our ability to care for our parents. So anyway, I'll kind of give you a synopsis of the story, so just in case anybody's on who has not read it. So a week after our mama died from pancreatic cancer, I did what generations of females in my family had thought of as unthinkable. I crammed 87 years of my father's life into 2 suitcases, forced him to leave his dog in his home, and disposed of him behind locked doors among other discarded, lost, and confused old people in an Alzheimer's assisted living facility that he preferred to call assisted dying. That's the way my sister described what I did. And the way I would describe it is that I found an ideal living situation for him in a memory care facility that only had 20 patients. There were rooms around a central living room. They had a dog. Anyway, totally different perspectives on the same thing. So my sister, and again, she was a physician, Dr. Diane Stinson, could no longer live with what she called Papa's incarceration in a sleeper cell of questionable care. So she elder napped him from the facility, that's my word, and quit her career as a physician to doctor him herself 24/7. So we got 2 different care situations, 2 different perspectives. One where my sister took him into her home and took care of him basically for 24/7. She had no friends. She had no support system. I came out to California as often as I could, but she was the whole thing. She had a husband who was at work all day. And she had initially a daughter who was in high school and then went on to college during those 7.5 years. So, I guess if you described my part of the story, and the way we wrote the Sisterly Shove was that we alternated chapters. So when something would happen, I wrote a chapter with my perspective, and then she would write one from her perspective. So it is a good snapshot of the feelings, the emotions, the way people approach life, even when they've grown up in the same family. So I describe my side of the story as capturing the cuckoo's nest cast of characters in Alzheimer's assisted living, where 87-year-old Papa would tell me, "You got to get these women out of my bed. If they were younger, it would be fine, but they are not." So that was that's what I mean by that. And then my sister's side of the story, I described that as revealing the humor, pathos, frustration, and back-breaking labor of being the sole caregiver for an aging parent. And at the same time, I would say she was mourning the death of the healthcare system that she knew as a student at Duke Med School. So she had a lot of stuff going on, extremely intelligent. If you sum it up, the book itself, I would say, reveals our society's views about the relative worth of old people as they age, as healthcare evolves, and it validates different decisions about elder care, showing that there's no silver bullet solution. Elder care choices really do have all kinds of shades of gray. That, in a nutshell, is what happened. It was, I've heard dementia called a family sport. Ours was more of a singles tennis match where we were lobbing shots at each other and, ultimately thought one of us could be the winner. But that was kind of foolish, wasn't it? So anyway, let's see. Like a lot of different things, screenplays and all, it's got an inciting incident. The memoir has an inciting incident, which was a surprise medical diagnosis. And I think a lot of people this happens to, don't you? Something happens to the status quo, and a lot of times it's a medical issue. You believe that? What do you think?
No, I think so.
I would agree. I think that's the thing, is that we sort of see, as our kids are growing up, we have an idea of what's going to happen, because we've already been through that. We know teenagers like this, young adults is like this, but once you go past a certain point, aging is greatly influenced by our medical situation, our health, or an accident, or a fall, or a diagnosis, and so what might have been a normal path changes because we have this, as you say, inciting event. Yeah.
Another thing about my sister, and I don't know how many people in families that have physicians as part of the sibling complement. She had chosen to become a pathologist. So what that meant is she spent her working life in California as a physician reading slides, mostly diagnosing cancer, all behind the scenes. So I sort of think my mom's cancer diagnosis, which was the inciting incident, was her chance to throw herself on the front lines of care, something that she had done in medical school, but now she was being denied that. She was behind a microscope all day. So I think that was an interesting part of it. I never saw it that way at the time, but you do have some insights once you get it to the other side, right?
Which one of you was the older?
She was 5 years older.
And there were no other siblings.
Yeah, there were two brothers.
Okay.
Two brothers who.
Oh, the plot thickens.
Yeah, the two brothers were missing in action, really.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if that was because they were afraid to battle it out with us, or whether it was just their nature and their family situations. I don't find fault with that, but still, it's a salient factor.
Yeah.
So Malia, you had moved your dad into a facility that you felt comfortable with, but then your sister comes and elder naps him, and I love that
Exactly.
term.
Oh, thank you.
How did you react? And did she take him all the way back to California, or did she move to North Carolina? Oh, she did.
No.
And so, I mean, how did you react? What did you do? Did you, I mean, I don't know. Where did you go from there?
I mean, it is daunting to assume care of someone, and because I wasn't taking care of him hour by hour, day by day. He was in a great place, and I did an excellent job, I thought, of getting him out several times a week, taking him to lunch, taking him to various places just to have a change of environment and situations or whatever. But kind of what happened is she came for a visit, and I don't know how this was allowed, but she actually, I think, slept in a chair in his room for a number of days. And then at that point, she looked at me and she said, I mean, I thought he felt safe. I thought he loved it. He was there for 5.5 years when this elder napping happened.
Oh, wow.
And so I'd been doing it all that time. She came to North Carolina, just decided the facility was hazardous to his health, and took him to California. And how did I feel? If I'm being really honest, there was a certain sense of relief, that somebody else was going to take their share. And I've been doing this for 5.5 years. And when my mom died, I had an 8-year-old daughter. So, the whole sandwich generation thing was in full play. And my dad would not go anywhere in the car if he thought he was being, when he was at our house for a few days. Well, first he would run around naked, and my daughter was already afraid of the dark and afraid of burglars and afraid of people coming to the door saying they were delivering balloons when they were bad guys. And having a naked old man running around the house was, I mean, I don't mean to laugh about it, but I mean, I hear that from a lot of people that they're, once you get dementia, you want to be a nudist.
Yeah, I mean,
so there were just a lot of issues. So, that was when I chose the memory care facility. That, she wanted me to keep him in our home, and it was not a viable solution. But anyway, I'm trying to remember what you asked.
Well, so can I ask, because he has dementia and he's in a facility, I mean, were there legal things? Did you have to give permission? Or I can't imagine someone can just go and like well, we're leaving. Sign this guy out forever. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
they were pretty, there were, wasn't aware of anything legal.
okay.
All I know is that, um, I remember going in there and crying and them counting out his pills. The main thing for them seemed to be they wanted to hit all of the things that were
Yes.
prescribed and make
Yeah.
sure he
Yeah.
went away with his medications. That seemed to
Got
be
it.
the best. And I'm sure they knew my sister was just, whoa, she was a
Yeah.
lot.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, they were like, please get him out of here as fast as
Oh my
possible.
goodness. Yeah.
That's
Wow.
terrible. That's terrible. But anyway,
No.
so that's how that happened. And there was some relief. I was a little worried that I didn't know what his life would be like,
Right.
because and for years after, when I'd go out and visit, he would look at me and he'd say, Malia, where are all the people? Because he was basically in a bedroom in the lower level of her house. And, that let me know that being in a social environment, even though, he had dementia, he was actually one of the more lucid and you know, funny people there. But that let me know that he knew it was a change, and maybe he didn't really think it was a change for
Yeah.
Yeah, when I think about it now, it's I feel like I did the best for him I could, and she would have said that I was a danger to him, you
Oh
know.
my goodness. Yeah.
But anyway, so once she had him in the house and took care of him all this time. And in terms of a timeline, so he was getting ready to celebrate his 100th birthday, and he had lived
Wow.
with dementia for 15 years. So I flew out to the birthday celebration. It was on October 31st, 2013, and he called himself a spook it was his mother's Halloween joke. But I flew out there and he was a different person. It was like aliens had come and taken away the look in his eyes and he would not smile, and it was definitely clearly a change from what it had been. So um by November 20th, his birthday was October 31st, he was in the hospital diagnosed with end-stage heart disease. So
Mm.
I flew to LA immediately, but he died 45 minutes before I got there. So
Man.
that was heart-wrenching.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I would say that, you're really, really torn, and I'm sure other people who have been caregivers say this too. Are you okay to feel relief? Is it okay to
Right.
feel relief?
Right. Yeah.
And I think it is, but I all you can do is the best you can do, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, that's a great question, and I think it's, absolutely. I don't know, Marianne. We've probably heard from a number of authors, and that's not an unusual reaction because it is a lot. It's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Your life, everything is very different when you're doing this caretaking. So it's human,
Hmm.
to
Yeah,
feel that way.
Well, I think a
right.
lot of people feel relief when it ends,
Yeah.
although only ends with death, that's the way out. So, you're waiting for that to happen for like years, and then it happens, and seems like it's all of a sudden, and people feel, I think, both
Hmm.
relief and then maybe guilt because they
Mm-hmm.
feel
Mm-hmm.
relief.
Yeah,
It's kind of, you
yeah.
don't
Well,
even,
you've all been there.
Yeah.
yeah, we've all been there.
Now,
All
So
the Go
I
ahead.
wanted you to back up and talk
Okay.
about the situation when your mother was still living in in her care, and your father had dementia during that time as well.
Right, right.
Yeah,
So,
what was that like?
well, her diagnosis of pancreatic cancer was a 3 to 6 month death. And that's
Mhm.
was, especially back then, was typical. So
Yes.
she Diane came and took her to California,
Mm.
which happened early on. I guess I was there. This is another piece of it. I hired caregivers to be in their home, to be with my dad and to, do whatever she needed to done, which was a lot. I mean, she had a lot of tubes coming out of her body and all that. So she had 24-hour care. Um, but one day, my sister just did not believe that she could not save her.
Mm.
And so she called one day, and the caregiver answered, and she said, "Put my mom on." And my mom said, "The room is going dark." And that just absolutely, she again thought these people are going to kill my mother. And
Mm.
so, I mean, she took her on a plane. Good thing it was before 9/11, because she took her on a plane with the G tubes hanging out of her and covered her
Mm.
up with a blanket and, took her across the country to California.
Oh,
Wow.
gosh. So your parents were separated at the end of her life.
Just
What
no,
was that like?
just for a few weeks, because that's
Okay.
Mhm.
I had my dad and I flew him out there, and she had an interesting part in the book about she had hired a nursing student to help her because she was still working at a position as a physician at that time. And I'm trying to remember where that passage is. Anyway, basically, um, when my dad arrived on the scene, it was total pandemonium. She was trying to take care of my mom, and he was screaming at my mom that she was lazy and needed to get out of the bed. I guess he was in total denial about her condition. And so that only, she took her there in, let's see, September, and she passed away during the night on Christmas. That was probably less than a 3.5 month period that she was there. And then he came back to North Carolina, which is when I found the memory care facility. So it's
Oh,
kind of a
okay.
complicated story with a lot of
Right.
Yeah, a lot going
levels.
on, a lot of
Hmm.
moving pieces.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
moving pieces.
So were you providing care for both of them when she was first diagnosed?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
The caregivers were on the job. They were CNAs, certified nursing assistants, but I was definitely in the thick of it. So they were in their house, not my house. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that was extremely difficult because I didn't have any hope. You know, I just wanted her out of her misery. And anyway, my sister knew all the medicine. She fought with all the doctors. I mean, if you read the book, the passages where she is taking on the whole medical establishment are just horrifying, really, to me. So anyway, but that was,
Hmm.
it was a 13-year unbelievable thing.
So,
But yeah,
so your sister's a physician in California. You're in North Carolina.
right.
You're caring for your parents. You're raising a child. You're a writer at this time. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then after your parents pass away, did you both agree to write this book together? How
Yes.
did you come
And
to do that?
we actually started before, when my dad was still out there and she was taking care of him all the
Hmm.
time. Um, I honestly wanted to do this and have her write half of the chapters so her brain would have something to do,
Hmm.
something
Hmm.
to chronicle, something to think about, something to, just keep her going. I just
Yeah.
honestly did not know how she kept going. So we would,
Hmm.
I'd write a chapter, she'd write a chapter, she'd edit mine, I'd, try not to edit hers. And it was a lot of back and forth. And I guess he slept a good bit. So,
Yeah.
she could write in those times. So it was a collaborative effort while he was still alive.
Okay.
But
Do
it
you
took years afterwards to finish.
do you feel like doing that together as she was still caregiving and your father was still alive. Do you feel like that,
Mhm.
I don't know, helped your relationship? Maybe because it was a way for
I
you
think
to
it,
communicate with
yes,
each other without tension, right?
I do. That's a good way to put it. I, I think that otherwise there would have been a wall, a wall halfway across the country or whatever. Because I could see her perspective because she put it down in words on, you know, on a screen. So I do think that I wanted her to have something to do, but I think it was somewhat healing in terms of us being able to see in the person's own words what they were feeling, what they were thinking, and how they were reacting differently. And
Mm.
I think at some point I can read a little bit about what I walked away with.
Yes,
If
please.
I don't know
That'd
if
be
we're to
great.
that point, but I can do that. So this is the last chapter of the book, and I wrote it. I said, in the months and years to come, Diane would blame Papa's death on the irresponsibility of the people at the hospital who took the skin cancer off his face. So that was another totally insane thing. He's just celebrated his 100th birthday. He has a skin cancer on his face. She was a pathologist, so skin cancers were a big deal to her. So she asked him while he was in the hospital to take him back and take that off his face. I mean, he was 100. He was never gonna live long enough for a basal cell carcinoma to do anything to him. So
Mm.
another piece of insanity. But anyway, Diane would blame Papa's death, here I'll repeat it, on the irresponsibility of the people at the hospital who took the skin cancer off his face. I would blame time. He was 100 years old. He was bedridden. Without prompting, he didn't know who anyone was or where he was, whether he had been married, whether he had had kids, or where he had gone to work every day, decade after decade. He had no frame of reference for his life at all. From my perspective, he existed in some cruel celestial limbo. Diane's perspective, as it had been throughout our entire lives, was totally different. She said if the surgical team had not chosen to lay Papa down flat during the procedure, he would have been fine. He would not have stopped eating. He would have lived for many more years. And if she had supervised the surgery herself, he probably would be alive and glad to be alive. Whew. Anyway, whenever Diane would start talking about that day with anger and frustration, the best I could do was to listen and try not to say anything to send her in a downward spiral. Even 15 years after, and this is me, this you can hear my voice coming around to appreciate her. I mean,
Yeah.
I've just
Yeah.
slammed her, right? Even 15 years after he was diagnosed with dementia, my angel of a sister believed our dad had a measurable quality of life. To her, life in any way, shape, or form is worth living. He had taken care of her. She had to take care of him with no trepidation, with no fear, with no doubts. It was a black and white decision for her. She had to stand vigilant, ever ready to fight for his life. Throwing in the towel was never an option. At times during Papa's last years, I managed to fight alongside my sister, but never as ferociously as she did. Along the way, even though I had roller coaster feelings about your quality of life when you have dementia, I began to desperately want her to outlive me. I figured that if I got old, desperate, and demented, she would fight for me as much as she did for him. In light of what has transpired since Papa passed away, my hope for that outcome seems to be rapidly fading away. And I told you guys a little bit about that, why my hope for her being my caregiver faded away.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. That's
And,
beautiful.
yeah. So you can see that I'm sure there's somewhere in the book where she celebrated me in that kind of a nice light. And
Sure.
so I would say, even though sisterly love turned to sisterly shove, um, we came to understand each other. We grew closer because of it. You know, we've lived on opposite coasts since we got out of college, and
Mm-hmm.
so you know, there's positives in all situations, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And how did she view the final product, and how about your brothers? How have they read it, and what did they think?
Yeah, I think they've read it and they've liked it, and other relatives have, you know, liked it. I mean, I guess it's a story that's hard to, um, it's sad, you know, it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
really, really say, oh, that was a great book because it's not a great story, really, you know. So, but yeah, good reactions, good, you know, I do think it gave the others something to talk about, and you know, sort of a little window into what happened to him when they weren't around, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was
Mm-hmm.
good. It was good.
I wondered if you had any advice, Malia, for siblings who are, you
Who
know,
are trying to
yeah, who are facing this now. What would be
right.
some of the things that you would recommend after having
Mhm.
gone through this together?
Well, I think you know, I go back and I think about, you know, people have told me that we could have avoided these years and years of sisterly shove by talking to our parents when they were in their 60s about what they would want to do if they got an incurable disease or dementia. Um, but, you know, we didn't, because I guess neither they nor we could bring ourselves to imagine a time when they would be dead. And I mean,
Right.
that's just the bottom line. Um, Now, my husband, on the other hand, his parents told him and his siblings no ifs, ands, and buts what they wanted done. If they became a burden, let us go. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that sounds simplistic. I'm not sure how you do that, but anyway, that was. So I wonder, you know, in terms of sibling relationships, maybe have frank conversations, and try to realize that you're different people, you have different responsibilities, you're in different places of your lives, and see the other person's perspective and try not to be a bully. I guess is the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. Maybe that's a
No,
flip
I think
answer,
that
but
no, but I think that that's actually that tracks with I
yeah,
think what we've seen. And I don't know,
yeah.
Malika, you work with a lot of families. Do you find that that's like listening to Malia talk about like don't be a bully with the others? I don't know if you had a thought on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I really liked how you were very opinionated on how your sister behaved, but I think on the at the end you were able to see like we needed both. Like there are some situations where you need to be fiery, and there was some situations where okay, she sounds ridiculous. Like this makes
Yeah.
absolutely no sense. But I think you were able to really like take a step back and see that everything she had going for her, she was trying to help. She was trying to
Yeah.
help in the way that she knew, and also trying to combat maybe this healthcare system that she knew from another lens that and perspective that you didn't have. And it sounds like, oh, that's not happening to my parents. Like that's that all of that energy that she had to kind of where you're like, oh, just let it go. Let's keep this the status quo. They're fine. So that I thought that was really beautiful because
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
it can be difficult. I wasn't surprised when you said it was just the two of you because
Uh-huh.
it's a lot of female, the daughters stepping up, and it's usually not all the children. And then I really liked how you were able to, you said because she was writing her thoughts, you were both writing this book, you were able to, you knew how she felt. You didn't, Yeah, you didn't, and she knew how you felt because it sounded like you were openly like, okay, that was ridiculous. You didn't have to act that way when we went here or did this. So I think that you had something special because sibling relationships can be tricky, but somehow even with the conflicts, you two worked it out.
Yeah. And the other thing I think about is what if I had not had her? If it had just been me, what would I have done? You know, what would I have done? I would have been totally overwhelmed. And, you know, so look at your siblings that way. You know, what if you were an only child? You know, what if it was all on your shoulders? And I think that in dealing with siblings is a good perspective that you can appreciate any
Yes.
contribution they make, right?
Yeah, for sure. I had a similar situation with my mom who was so afraid to ever be in a nursing home. And at the end of her life, she was in hospice. They gave us like a 2-week timeline, and we couldn't do it at home. We just didn't have the supports in place. So she went to a facility, which we thought would be a nice Catholic facility. She could go to mass every day, and that would be nice. But it wasn't. It wasn't. I mean, really wasn't very nice. My brother could not tolerate seeing her there, and him and his girlfriend, who was a nurse, they decided they were going to take her out. And we got actually my mother went off hospice and went into rehab, so she became ambulatory again. It's a long story, but he just told them at the place, he said, I'm bringing my mother home on Saturday, have her ready. And they said, oh no, you can't do that. He said,
Wow.
well, I'm going to do it, so I want her paperwork and everything in place. And I didn't really agree with it because I didn't think they worked, and I didn't think they could manage it. But you know what? They did. He reconverted his whole house to accommodate her, and had to blow through her money hiring aides to come and stay with her. And then she lived with him for 2 months before she passed. So at least she wasn't in that nursing home anymore.
Right,
But he
right.
stepped up for that. And like he really, I never would have bet on that would have happened. I would not have I never would have thought he would have done a thing like that. And maybe he wouldn't have if he didn't have his girlfriend, who
Yeah.
was a nurse. So yeah, but people can surprise us.
Yeah.
They can. They can.
So in the chat, one of our guests, Arlene, writes, I am an only child and I did take care of my mom with Alzheimer's and my dad had COPD. I think I got gray hair overnight, but there were some nice times despite that. I hear you, Arlene. I think I got gray hair pretty quickly too. Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
not an
that's
easy road.
that when I listen to her situation, then I'm even more grateful for my sister, this combativeness. So I commend her. She's phenomenal too. I've done it
Yeah,
alone.
yeah, yeah. So as a writer, then I am wondering if taking the action of writing things, were you a journaler? Was that a way for you to process some of your feelings to begin with? Um, and then did you have to help your sister learn to use writing or was that already something that came naturally for her?
Uh-huh. I did not journal, and I think it was more of getting perceptions down real time since we did start it before our father passed away. For her, she was such a multi-talented person. Writing was effortless for her. So,
Mm,
she played the viola and the first chair viola in the Charlotte Junior Symphony. I mean, she was so multi-talented that, yeah. I mean, I call myself a writer, mainly an advertising copywriter, but and a producer, but I was trained to write. I went to journalism school and whatever, and she just zipped this stuff off. So anyway, but no, it was kind of a labor of love, and it was, we um I think we both got a lot out of it. And
yeah.
the writing was really the easy part, you know
Okay.
so top of mind. I know it's not for everybody, and somebody who is going to try to put their their thoughts down, whether in terms of a book or whatever else, some writing courses will make a big difference. There's a place in Charlotte where I did some of the writing later on and some of the refining and the polishing that has, it's a literary arts society, and they have free time and free space for you to go and, focus on what you're doing. So having something like that in your community is extremely helpful. But even journaling, I look at Sisterly Shove as it's my memory of the time, right?
Yeah, right.
And I think it was I would have forgotten all the details of what happened without it. So I think journaling for most people is something they will really appreciate down the road.
Sure. Yeah.
So one thing that's in the book that I didn't mention, and did I mention about my sister getting dementia? I know I told you that
No.
before we turned the
Right.
camera on, but unfortunately, my sister in my dad's family, there were 5 of them, and all but one of his siblings got dementia by the time they were 85.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, the pattern in our family and still is. So my sister, after taking care of him for 7.5 years, she began to lose her memory around age 65. And I'm really, really sad to report that she passed away from dementia in April 2022 at age 72.
I'm so sorry.
So that broke my heart because she gave her all to him. And I just wonder, did the social isolation, did the lack of a life outside of that house, did it, like you said, exacerbate something that she had, that was a family kind of inheritance, unfortunately, to begin with. So I don't know the answer to that. Maybe some of the people who are watching, have had something similar happen, that somebody who really, and maybe Malika, pours themselves into caregiving. What does it do to them?
Yeah, you do see that a lot, and it's unfortunate. I do have a question though. Did your sister, what was her care like? I know she was really adamant about her parents
Mm-hmm.
not going to a memory care or
Right. Her husband stepped up and kept her in their home. And he still went to work every day. So I'm not sure. She seemed to watch television a lot, but she did not wander. She didn't leave and go down to the beach or whatever. They lived in a beach town. So he was lucky in that way. But he went really early, went to work at the university really early in the morning when she wasn't awake. So I guess she slept for a long time, and he would get 4 or 5 hours of work in, and then he would come back. So props to him. He upheld her perspective
yeah.
better than most anybody would have, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was lucky. She set a standard, and the people who loved her upheld it.
And I don't know if he read the book or if he heard about it, like Pillow
Yeah,
Talk or whatever.
yeah,
I think that also gave him a glimpse into like how she felt about things, and it
exactly.
seemed like he honored it in her own illness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I say, I have the utmost admiration for him for doing that because it was difficult. So, but she was interesting. She was not angry. She was not abusive like my father was. She kind of accepted it, and maybe that's what made the difference.
Okay. So at some point, did she, like early on, like where, like your father passes away in 22, you said, right?
She passed away in 22. My
She
father
did.
actually passed away in 2013. So
Okay.
now it was 8 years later
That she
when
was
she died.
diagnosed. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Okay.
when she
Okay.
died. She was probably
Okay.
diagnosed I don't know, 3 to 4 years after he died.
Okay. Okay.
And then it was still a shock at age
Sure.
72, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was kind of the time frame of that. But yeah, it's it's difficult, and my brother-in-law doesn't really want to talk about it. I mean, he did what he had to do, and he's ready to move on with his life, which he certainly has
Right.
earned and deserves. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. And I do feel for, uh, it's a family legacy you don't want, it's certainly
no.
something I think about. My mother had
Hmm.
Alzheimer's, my dad had
Hmm.
vascular dementia, which I think followed a stroke. So that's a little different, but it's
But
hard to know.
you have the challenge on both sides of your family. My mother's side of
Yeah.
the family had no dementia, so it's kind of daunting and frightening, actually. So,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
anyway, but one other part of the book that I find interesting is my dad was an engineer for the power company, and he invented wire stringing equipment that saved linesmen's lives so they couldn't connect the wrong thing to the wrong power source and all of that. So he got awards for all that. But at the same time, he was a poet.
Oh,
So throughout Sisterly Shove, his poems are in there. And one that I particularly like, that if we've got time, I'll read it. And
yeah.
because
Yeah,
it's
please
Would
do.
love to.
compelling.
Would love to hear
Okay.
it.
Okay. So it's called Eternity by Thomas Wilder Stinson was his name. When I look into the night sky, the world seems but a blind. I wonder if dimension only lies within the structure of my mind. Is there any difference in the near and far? Is an atom really smaller than a star? Our minds perceive, it's funny that he talked about minds and brains. Our minds perceive in 4 dimensions. We call them space and time. Is this really the way things are, or is it just the structure of our mind? If the world was 1 dimension, we could not see beyond a line. There would be no right and be no left, just one ahead and one behind. If the world had 2 dimensions, there would be no up or down. We could not climb a mountain, all would be level ground. If the world were 3 dimensions, there would be no time to pass and would be no bright tomorrow. And now, right now, would always last. But our minds perceive in 4 dimensions. We call them space and time. Is this the way things really are, or is it just the structure of our minds? What happens to 2 dimensions then when in the grave we lie? Is there a world of no dimensions somewhere beyond the sky?
Mm.
I just think the fact that a person who was, so insightful about the mind and the brain was the one that got dementia.
Right. Yeah.
Killer. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
anyway,
beautiful poem. I love that.
it is. It is beautiful. I take a lot of solace in it, and I know that it was a part of him that was another interesting part of him. He was a cool guy.
Yeah. That's lovely.
It was. Is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners here?
No, I mean, let me see if I can think of anything else at all.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. I hope more siblings will follow you and your sister's lead. I think it's just beautiful the way you two were able to be so honest with one another during the process. And I hope it's a gem that you'll always cherish.
Yeah, it will be. And like I say, whether you journal or write a book or together or whatever you do, just talk to each other. Just try to stay on the same wavelength. Easier said than done, I know. But anyway, it's a struggle, and you'll get through. We got through, and you will get through one way or the other.
Yep, that is the truth, and I think that's sometimes in the midst of it hard to imagine that you'll get through it, but we do get through it. So Malia, where can we find you? Where will people listening find you? And
The easiest way to get the book is just go to Amazon.com and search for Sisterly Shove. My website is being reconstructed again, but it will be back up soon. I have another site at maliakline.com, but it doesn't deal with Sisterly Shove specifically.
got it.
So when that site goes back up, it'll be sisterlyshove.com. And so
Excellent.
that's one way to learn more about us. But the book itself is easiest thing is to go to Amazon.com and
Right.
search for Sisterly Shove.
And you can also learn more about Malia at allsauthors.com. We
That's
do
right.
have you on the podcast a couple of years back, and you have your blog post up there, so you can just
Okay.
search her name on our homepage. There's a search
Good.
engine, and you can locate those things if you'd like to learn more about her story and get all her links, social media, all of that is on there. And we'll have all that stuff in the show notes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And thank you to all authors. You do an
Mm.
unbelievable service to people who are struggling with whatever.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. You're so kind. We try.
Thank you
Do.
so much.
I'm always amazed by you. So yay for
Yeah.
you.
Well,
Thank you.
it's incredible to hear from so many people who are managing and caregiving, and either we have authors who are themselves have early onset or continuing with their struggle with dementia. So it's an honor always to have our authors talk to us, because it's incredible what people are going through, and how when we share these stories, it helps so many people. So thank you for being a contributing author and doing what you're doing. Love it.
Yeah. Thank you for the show. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for attending Aging and Amazing's Books and Chit Chat with All's Authors. We'd love to see you at our next book discussion on Tuesday, January 28th at 2 p.m. We're changing the time. We're going to be meeting in the afternoon. When we meet Mary Crescenzo to discuss her book, The Planet Alzheimer's Guide, 8 Ways the Arts Can Transform the Life of Your Loved One and Your Own. Mary is an author, playwright, musician, artist, and all-around creative who has much to share about bringing the arts to your dementia journey. You can learn more about her and register for the event in the Books and Chit Chat channel in the Aging and Amazing community, or by visiting allsauthors.com. We'll get that information up in the next day or so. I also invite you to be among the first to know everything new at All's Authors as a subscriber to our weekly newsletter. Sign up at allsauthors.com, then check your inbox each week for our news, introducing our latest author, podcasts, special events, and more. And be sure to visit our blog, podcast, and shop at allsauthors.com to find more resources for your dementia journey. We've got some lovely gifts for caregivers, including our books. There are about 400 of them for you to choose from, and our poetry anthology, as well as some branded clothing and accessories to show your support for All's Authors. You can also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, where we share a wealth of resources for the dementia journey. Remember, you are not alone. One can sing a lonely song, but we chose to form a choir and create harmony. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Mary Ann with exciting news. All's Authors has published a brand new anthology, Poetry for the Dementia Journey, now available in ebook and paperback through Amazon. Within its pages, you'll discover a variety of voices writing about the diversity of dementia care experiences, caring for a mother or father or spouse, witnessing the decline of a sibling, reflections on the time before the diagnosis, the years of care, and the aftermath. Poetry provides us with a meaningful way to explore our experience and emotions regarding dementia, and to express ourselves when we encounter the many different joys and dilemmas caregiving can bring. You'll find details on how to order the book in the show notes. Please remember to leave a review on the book sales page once you've read it. Reviews do help boost a book's visibility and helps readers find it. Thank you for your support of our efforts to erase the silence and stigma that often accompany a dementia diagnosis.
Caregiving is a challenge, whether your person has dementia or not. Finding helpful tips and learning new strategies from people in the know is critical. That's why we at Owls Authors love the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast from Elizabeth Miller, who also happens to be an Owls author. Elizabeth speaks from experience and has important and often fun conversations with other caregiving experts and professionals. And we appreciate learning tips on self-care, discovering new resources, and feeling empowered to support ourselves as caregivers. You can find the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast wherever you download your favorite podcasts, or visit the website happyhealthycaregiver.com.